Hello, fellow modelers. Time to finally glue and paint something. As I mentioned in the episode with the inbox model, the kit cockpit is very simplified and does not fit current standards. Airwaves comes to the rescue with a photo-etched sheet metal on which we will find elements that will expand the cockpit a bit. I do not intend to use the parts prepared by Revell at all, so there will be a bit of my own creative inventiveness. With a scalpel with a curved blade, I cut off parts from the frame. I do it on a piece of ceramic tile to avoid deformation of the parts created when cutting on a flexible mat. I grind the connection of the parts to the frame with a file. The kit does not include a cockpit floor, so it is made by cutting an appropriately sized piece from PET plate. I use a simple tool, a metal ruler, and a scalpel blade to bend the parts. If you don't work on photo-etched parts much, this set will be more than enough. I glued the parts with regular CA glue. I apply the glue with an applicator made from a stretched model frame. The glue dripped onto the candle wax, makes it not dry quickly, and I have more time to work with one portion. So this is what the cockpit tub looks like made of Airwaves photo-etched parts. It's not a faithful reproduction of the original, but for me, compared to what Revell has planned, it's okay. I removed the giant ejector pin marks with a Dremel. It turned out that I had to change the cockpit tub design. First of all, the instrument panel had to be glued with a polyester plate. Secondly, the floor was too narrow and I had trouble fitting it into the fuselage. At the moment, there is no element in the fuselage that fixes the cockpit. Therefore, I cut strips from PET board, which I will then glue into the fuselage. The cockpit tub will later be mounted on them. As you can see, the first version of the cockpit did not satisfy me in the end, so I decided to make it again. First of all, I made the floor longer and reinforced the instrument panel by gluing it to plastic. Here, on the Tamiya tape, I outline the shape of the shelf behind the pilot's seat. Then I stick the tape on a PET plate and cut out the necessary element. The elements of the canopy sliding system will be added later. The finished element now needs to be placed in the model. Of course, I didn't think about adding any supports that would hold the part in place. But what do we have masking tape for? As the name suggests, for temporary fixing of parts. I start work on the resin pilot seat by cutting off the sprue block with a true-peter saw. Resin seats, in this case manufactured by Pavla, significantly improve the appearance of the cockpit, so whenever possible, I always use them in my models. When working with resin parts, special precautions should be taken, because the dust that is created during cutting is very harmful to our lungs. It is recommended to use a respirator mask or cut wrap. After removing the casting block, we grind the cut-off point onto a hard and flat surface. I almost forgot. And what would the pilot use to control his machine? I dug this element out of the stock of parts left over from finished models. So it's worth having a stock of parts, because you never know what might come in handy. Now I can move on to the next step, painting. The finished cockpit was made using photo-etched and resin accessories, as well as my own invention. In a comparison to Revell's vision of the cockpit, as you can see, the difference is significant. I start painting by applying a primer. I chose the gray Mr. Hobby Surfacer 1500. It will unify the color of the various materials used to construct the cockpit and increase paint adhesion. Then I painted the interior with Mr. Hobby C317 paint, which is an equivalent of the FS36231 dark gold gray paint, which has been the standard paint for cockpits of American aircraft since the 1950s. Looking at the reference photos, I noticed that the ejection seat was painted a darker gray than the cockpit tub, so I used dark gray XF24 from Tamiya. Using Tamiya Weathering Set B, I lightened the edges of the painted cockpit. I used the same method as with a dry brush. That is, I rubbed the pigment into the protruding edges with a brush applicator. Remember that the surface should be matte. The pigment will settle better on the parts, and you don't have to be afraid of overdoing it. The later varnish will dull the effect. I did the same with the ejection seat. I paint the details with a brush using acrylic paints. I mainly use Vallejo model color paints and brushes with natural bristles. First, I paint the headrest red. Then I paint the back cushions with sage green, which is made by mixing olive green and white paint. For the seat cushion, I added gray paint to the previous color according to photos of the original seat. I painted the instrument panels black with AK paint using a thin brush. The first generation of AK paints were quite thin, paints described as ready for airbrushing and brush painting. Because of this, 2 or 3 layers are needed to achieve good coverage, but thanks to this, there's also less chance of flooding the details. These paints dry very quickly, so I can basically paint a second layer right away. And what are your favorite paints for painting with a brush? Write in the comments. Finally, all that was left was to paint the last few small details. The catapult handle and the pilot seat belts. highlighted the details with Tamiya pigments. You can use oil, acrylic, or enamel paint for this. When using paints, first rub the excess paint into the towel so that there are remnants on the brush. The idea is to leave the remnants of paint from the brush only on the edges of the painted detail. After securing the previous works with a clear gloss varnish, I applied a wash. While the dry brush method creates the illusion of illuminating convex elements, the wash is intended to create the illusion of shadows and concavities. There is no need to worry about excess wash. Thanks to the fact that we covered the details with a gloss varnish, after the wash dries, we will remove the excess with a Q-tip. For the green seat cushions, I used AMMO MIG Brown Enamel Wash. Next, I cover the seat body with dark gray panel liner from Tamiya. I use the same for the cockpit tub. What washes do you use? Enamel, acrylic, or homemade oil or pastel? Share in the comments. I removed excess wash with a Q-tip soaked in white spirit. As you can see, the wash remains in the recesses. The gray ammo panel liner used is similar in color to the one used to paint the cockpit tub, which gave me the effect of separate control panels. Is the final result of the work on the cockpit. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of my work in the comments. Please subscribe and comment. See ya!